Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Chakra Way Meditation Podcast. I'm Roseanne, your host, and I am today joined by what I think is going to be someone who's going to give us some really interesting insights. It's Catherine Duncan. Now, Catherine is an integrative spiritual consultant. I feel like Catherine has had many lives, and one of the things that I'm super interested in is her near-death experiences. And she's an author of a book, Everyday Awakening. But I feel like we're going to learn a lot from Catherine about what it is to be fully alive. And so this is a conversation that I'm excited to have. So welcome, Catherine. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Great to meet you today.
Yeah. So this integrative, if I can say it, spiritual consultant, what does that mean? What does that mean you do exactly?
I work with people providing emotional and spiritual support. Integrative meaning it's the whole person, mind, body, spirit. You're integrated as a person holistically. And so that's what I do with my private practice, seeing people one-on-one and public speaking. And then even in my book, Everyday Awakening, it's holistic about how do we live as a whole person and well-being and living from our heart and soul.
I mean, God, this really speaks to everything that I love, and I suspect that all my listeners love as well. This very holistic idea that we cannot separate mind, body, spirit, that they all affect one another. And certainly in my work in the chakras, that is my kind of map, my guide, if you like, to finding our emotional life within our body, within ourselves. And so what drew you to this? Because like I said in the intro, I feel like you've had several lives already. Talk us through how you got to be where you are at the moment.
I started out, my career was in the business world. I was in advertising. I was with Time Magazine here in the US selling regional advertising, and it was very glamorous. I mean, I was meeting a lot of people and making lots of money and traveling on Time's corporate jet. And
Wow.
um, it really was the big turning point was in my 30s. I had a near death experience on a Time Inc. corporate trip, whitewater rafting. That was such a turning point. I was like, I had felt this nudging in my heart, like this wasn't quite what I was doing, even though the lure of money and all that was there. But it gave me the courage to just step off that fast track corporate path to just listen, like, where am I being called and who am I and why am I here? And then that led me to studying theology and everything I've done up to this point. And also to share, as a child, 11 years old, I almost died. I came very close. I was a childhood cancer survivor, and that experience is really when my journey started, where that really cracked me open at 11 years old about what does it mean to be alive right now. So yes, I feel like I've seen and experienced a lot already.
Exactly. Wow. Yeah, because it's interesting because I read that you had had a couple of near-death experiences, and first off, that one on a corporate adventure, presumably it was a team building exercise that went horrifically wrong. Um, but I did not realize that you had had a childhood experience, which must have been incredibly traumatic for you then, and then to process through your adult life. So, how did I mean, can you remember how you felt as an 11-year-old being in that situation? What kind of support was it that you needed in order to get through it? Was it religion? Because you've studied to be a chaplain now. What was it that got you through that, and what did you learn from that?
Yeah, when I was actually I was 10 years old turning 11.
Oh,
I was suddenly very sick, and my parents took me to the hospital, and not long after diagnosed with a very rare childhood cancer, and they told my parents I had a 20% chance to live. It was a lot. I started going through really intensive treatments. Interestingly, the year I was sick, this drug came over from Turkey that was randomly being given to patients because it could cause heart problems. And my father, this consummate entrepreneur, he's gone now, he's passed away, but he met the doctors and he said, demanded I get this drug. And this drug now is standard treatment for what I went through. Survival rates now are like 80%. But anyway, I started going through all these treatments, and interestingly, they did have chaplains, they did have counselors. No one talked to me. My mother would say, "You're going to be fine." And that was so
Wow.
comforting, but there was no reality of like what I was living through, going through so much intensive treatments. And I was so sick, and I quickly felt like I was walking on a tightrope between life and death. I felt like didn't know if I was going to live. I could feel I was on the edge of life, and I organically just started to pray. When my prayer was, please, could I live? And actually, I prayed, could I live to be 20? I thought if I lived to be 20, I would see the world. And I told no one, but I kept praying and praying and praying. And not long after, this feeling of just like peace came through my body and took my breath away. It was just like, and a knowing I was going to be okay. And
Wow.
knowing I wasn't alone. And I didn't tell anyone, but it gave me so much comfort, and it's been with me to this day.
What an
I really awakened. I opened up, like, what does it mean to be alive? It happened when I was 11.
I mean, like most people go through life, I would say until they reach maybe like 40 something, thinking death is just they
Yep.
can't even grasp the idea of
Mhm.
what death is. I mean, I'm 54. I think I'm only just beginning to kind of engage with the idea, but I know in my 20s, I was like, I don't, whatever, if I live to be 70, fair enough, don't really care. Like you don't have a clear idea of what that means. And you did from a very young age. So that must have, I mean, that's clearly colored your entire life. I mean, you went along with the standard thing and you became successful and you made money and you had a career and all of that kind of thing. But that foundational experience must have been definitely still playing out for you.
Oh, huge. I mean,
Mm,
I got through all the treatments gratefully. And as a teenager, I started reading books and I'm like, why am I alive? Life, meaning, purpose, like existentialism and human emotion, Jean-Paul Sartre, Who is Man by Abraham Heschel. That's what I was voraciously reading as a teenager. Like, why am I here? And as I was in the corporate world, as I mentioned, and then with Time Magazine, we'd go on trips and I'd bring books, stacks of books on this topic, spirituality and philosophy. And my colleagues would see sometimes these books and they'd be like, what are you reading? Like, what is this? And so that's why, yes, over halfway through my career at Time Inc., I don't know, my heart was like, is this really it? So when
mm,
that experience happened, whitewater rafting, I just was like, I'm done. It gave me the courage, like literally within a few weeks, I gave my notice and I'm like, I'm done. I'm
yeah,
done. I need to listen, like, where really am I being called?
yeah. And so as soon as you left Time magazine, you then what was your next step? So like this is like happens in, really short period of time, like a matter of a month or so, that you
Mhm.
have this horrible experience and you quit your job and then what?
Yeah.
And
So at the time, my husband had a small startup internet company and he's like, come work with us a little bit. So I go from Time Magazine glamour, right, to this warehouse with 10 guys. It's like, oh, like, man, this isn't feeling like a fit. And then the head of Time Inc., Mark, called me like, hey, what's up? And I was so confused, like, what am I doing? But so I did that a little bit. Yeah, not quite a good fit. I picked up some consulting work, but I just really, I was always praying, but meditating, journaling, just listening, like, where am I being called really intently, you know,
Mm,
tuning in. And interesting synchronicity. A few months into this, a girlfriend late at night her name's Connie, started, we were talking on the phone. It was so odd. Why so late at night? And she's like, have you ever thought of studying theology and spiritual direction? I had never thought of it. There's no one in my family lineage in this area, but I was like, and then she mentioned some universities, and there's a university here called actually St. Catherine's. And when I got the materials from St. Catherine's, my body started physically shaking. It was just like trembling. And it was just like, I knew this was it. Yeah. And then I applied, I got in, I went out, I remembered to tell my father that, okay, I quit Time Magazine and I was going to study theology. And he was this consummate businessman. That was the paradigm in my family. I vividly remember, he started yelling, screaming at me. Yeah. And it was just like, and at first he's like, geology. And I know it's theology. But it just was a letting go of like, it's okay. He was became my biggest supporter before he died. And yeah, it was right on.
It challenges his expectations and desires for you to have that security of financial career, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
Okay, so I'm going to bring you back to this because I find this is something that I think a lot of people identify with. So people, I find clients, and I'm sure the listeners are a lot of them searching for this purpose. Like, they're stuck in the box in the office in front of their laptop with massive spreadsheets or what have you. And they're going, is this it? Really? Is this it? Because I know I only have one life. There must be more. So whenever I have an issue that I don't know how to resolve, that I don't know, in the same way that you probably pray, I give it over to the universe. It's the same thing, God, universe,
Yep.
source, whatever.
Totally.
And I go to sleep and I say, universe, can you just show me the way? I just give over that problem. Because when I think about it too hard, my tiny little brain gets all scrambled in a mess and out just comes plurt and just nothing, nonsense. It's, I don't trust my brain to process what I actually need. It needs to drop in. So once it's dropped in as an idea, I'm like, where did that come from? Okay. And then I'll doubt it for about a month or two, and go, well, that was obviously just an idea. And you need to put, so talk to me a little about this process. So you were praying and searching for, why am I here? But were you intellectualizing that? Were you writing lists and doing research, or were you just putting it out there? What was your process?
Great questions. It's interesting leaving Time Warner, and actually just shortly before this might be helpful. I thought I wanted to be a manager. Like I'd be a manager for Time Magazine. We'd be living in New York City. And guess what? I manifested that. I got an offer to manage the Midwest region, and the words yes couldn't come out of my mouth. I was like, what is wrong with me? I get the job I want. I ended up saying no. I'm like, I felt I couldn't say the words yes. I remember that weekend I cried all weekend, like, who am I? So you see, there are like these little steps coming up to this. But once I quit, and I just really, there was a real surrender. I really surrendered. I just was upping my prayer time, my meditation time, journaling, listening. And I'm like, okay, what do you want? And here's a motto. And that's, then my girlfriend, that comment, and then things started to really fall into place. Because once I started graduate school, the first few weeks, one of my first classes was history of Christian spirituality. And what I'll share with you, I learned about world religions. I'm really inclusive. I think language is limiting. But when I took that class, I was reading about mystics, and I'm a mystic. I see spirits, I see a lot. And when I was reading Juliana Norwich, Teresa of Avila, all these people, I was like, my people. It was just like late at night, just like I'm crying. I was so happy reading these people. So I was getting these strong affirmations along the way. But a motto to share with you: be careful what you pray for. Because I was just like, whatever you want, which it was a sacred path. I would never do it differently, becoming a chaplain and a hospice chaplain. But, when you really surrender, it's like, wow, the guidance you can get. And sometimes it's a little uncomfortable. Like I had vowed I would never step foot back in a hospital. And then the calling through me was coming, chaplaincy. And I'm like, really? But I did. I became that. So a lot of affirmations like you, putting it out to the universe and listening, opening, feeling, sensing. That's where
Yeah.
it is, the
Yeah.
guidance.
I mean, I think, a lot of people live with regret. A lot of people who are in that sort of heavy backward looking energy, they look back at their lives and go, oh, if only I'd done this differently, or if, that sliding doors moment, like if only I'd taken that job, not that job, or, that train and not that train. And I feel like if you have faith in the path that you're treading, then there's no space for regret. Would you agree with that?
I agree. And I think our life path leads us on many directions, and it's never too late. That's my message. It's never too late.
Mm.
Can you tune in to how do you feel about your life? Do you feel peace and ease and preciousness of life? And if not, guess what? You can cultivate that. You can open into that. It's a choice, it's a practice for every one of us. If you're in your 20s or 60, 70, I just think it's honestly, it's never too late to really understand the feeling and the preciousness of life and living deeply, being soul guided from your soul, the oneness of the universe. It's all there.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm with you. And I mean, one of your big things that you talk about that is I feel is probably the subject of your book is what it means to be alive. Now, that's an interesting question, actually, to ask somebody, what do you think it is to be alive? And you could say, well, I'm breathing, my heart's beating, I'm therefore alive. Um, but how do you define alive for you? And what is that? Yeah, I mean, talk to me about what it is to be alive, because you've come close to death. So you have a keener eye on what that actually really means.
Mhm. I think really being alive is living in the here and now, living in just this moment, the preciousness of right now. And it's so easy to live in our mind, live in our thinking mind, where all the suffering happens. We're in our mind, we're in the past, the future, we're not here. But in the moment, just when you can drop in, if it's with your breath, just the presence of now, it's like, oh, the magicalness of like, I'm here. This is life. It's like that awe, that wonder, of which, when I say that, everyone, I'm guessing, hearing this right now, you've had that experience. You've had an experience of a moment, or maybe it's a fleeting moment of like wonder, awe, kind of time stops. That's what I'm talking about. That's the preciousness of life. And I think it's about living anchored in the moment, anchored in our heart. I think our heart is the doorway to our soul, but can you live from that steep sense of presence, of that oneness with the universe, of like, oh, that's it. That's it.
Mm. It is. You're absolutely right. The power of now is that's a Eckhart Tolle book, isn't it? But it is this present eternal now that we are constantly in, is where joy and peace is to be found for absolutely for sure. And I heard someone say the other day, which I really loved. And it was because we live in this busy world, we're surrounded by people, and quite often, the other people in our lives are and around us, and strangers and people we don't know are sources of angst or anger, or and we just need to turn on the news and we see people that drive us crazy, or whatever. But they said what a gift it is to be, you look around at your fellow human beings and you think about all of history and all of the future, and you think, I'm living at the same time as you for some kind of a reason, for some kind of the purpose. I am living and alive at the same time as you and as you and
Mhm.
as my soulmate and my, friends and these people who bring me joy and these people who bring me wisdom. And what an extraordinary, and I love that because it kind of brought it's sort of it's an inclusivity of now. I
Mhm.
suppose. Like we're all alive right now. How cool is that?
Yeah, that's really lovely.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it?
It's
Yeah.
lovely.
Oh God.
Mhm.
Sorry, my dog is pounding around in the background, being really distracted. I'll, I'll I'll cut this out of the podcast, but yeah, sorry. Being very distracted. Bobby, get on your bed. Get in your bed. Please. Go on. Go and get in your bed. There you go. I don't know what he wants. He's had his supper. Anyway, okay. So this idea that we are living in this moment now is very powerful, but it does not. But do you think that stops us from living in the past or living in the future? Is that it's constant work, right?
Oh, it is. I think we can live multidimensionally. We can live, and it's a lifelong practice, but I think we can truly live where the anchor, our anchor of our being, is living in the present moment, living fully here and now. And yet we'll use our mind to access data, ideas, planning, organizing, but we can live with the anchor present using our mind. And I see spirits every day, so it's like I'm living on all these levels in the moment, and we can truly live from that. But I do think it's a consciousness, it's a practice. I practice this. I mean, I'm human, and here and there, like all of a sudden something will catch my attention, and maybe I'll have like a fear thought or worry thought, but it's like boom, my mind goes over there. But I like zoom, I catch it, and I come back, and I keep practicing bringing living in the present moment, processing whatever feelings might come through me, to just really build that strong sense of, yeah, presence, container, like here I am.
Mm. So, in terms of like tools, techniques, tips to keep ourselves grounded in the present, especially when you're surrounded by other people who aren't doing the same work as you, what are
Right.
your tips for that, for surviving all those wonderful other people who we happen to be alive with at the same time?
My book, Everyday Awakening, has 42 exercises. There's many ways to come at this. And in my book, if it's, breath, if it's a body movements, if it's toning, a self-soothing, I mean, there's just many different ways to come at it. But a couple of my favorite are, like, even right now while I'm talking, can you just notice your hands, your fingers, just whatever's there, just dropping in, feeling your hands, your fingers. When you do that, you drop out of your busy, fast chattering ego mind and just like boom into the moment. Our body is always in the present moment. So ways to just little tips to just bring you into the now, into the moment. Or, you know, drinking coffee in the morning. I always make, a cup of coffee, and we make coffee. I have 1 cup of coffee, so when I'm drinking my coffee here, and here's my lovely coffee mug right now. I hold the coffee mug and I'm just really present. I'm just, so it's just cultivating. You can do that. Or it's your breath. There's many different ways to teach breathing. I'm guessing, you work with this on your show. If it's deep belly breathing, alternate nostril breathing, square breathing, so many, but just, I love breathing in when I get distracted, just breathing in peace coming through my body, breathing out stress,
Mm.
and just seeing peace flood through my body and stress leave my body. She's like, boom, here I am. So those are just a couple, but many different ways to just be mindful of noticing, wow, I'm way over here, to just come back and breathe and feel into just the beauty of life right now.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, for me, always the easiest thing because it's at your disposal wherever you are is your breath.
Mhm.
The breath, just taking one breath, one big breath in and out, and that can take maybe like 5 seconds, but in
Yep.
5 seconds, that's all. Oh, I love this. You're the same as me. I'm looking at you and I say one deep breath, and she goes, I'm the same. Whenever anybody says deep breath, I can't help but just like, oh yes, enjoy that deep breath. So everybody take a deep breath, just one big, beautiful breath. Be in this moment. I love that. So the other thing that I wanted to ask you about is that all these practices for opening your heart and soul, because when we live wholeheartedly, when we live from our heart, this is when life becomes really juicy, when life becomes really fulfilling, and we feel that we're living aligned with our soul. It's when our spirit is like, it's because we're answering our deepest desires, I guess, because we're fulfilling what the spirit wants from life, I guess. So
Mhm.
would you say, because having talked about how to bring ourselves into the present moment, for me, like they're all synonymous with opening the heart, the breath work, that, just that awareness, that bringing yourself back into your body. Would you say that that's the same work almost?
Absolutely. And I just think it's a consciousness, it's an awareness of I want to feel more. I want to feel movement and energy. It can be into your fourth chakra, your heart area. There's so many different ways to do it. The chakra seed word for your fourth chakra is yum. I mean, just like yum. Can you feel that vibration in your chest and growing that? I remember, interestingly, in my 30s, I wanted to feel more love. I grew up in a family where I never really heard the words "I love you." And
Mm.
I'm like, I want to feel more love. And I came across this meditation, and I have a version of it actually in my book, where it's like you go and walk and all of a sudden see your heart on a ledge and like, what does your heart need? And I did this meditation for 30 days. And at the end of the 30 days, all of a sudden I was in the kitchen making some lunch and I was just like, I felt this fluttering. And I'm like, yeah, your mind, body, spirit, they're all connected. And so there's just some wonderful breath exercises, meditations, mirror work, ways that you can that help you feel into that heart, your heart, the warmth, the love, growing that love. And I just think the reason we're here is to learn to love. I think that's why we're here. And I think what we take with us when we die is our ability to love.
Mm. Yeah. Well, let's move on to that, because your work as a chaplain in a hospice um, must have put you face to face with death on a almost daily basis.
Mhm.
What did you learn about um, this whole process of passing to the other side? What are your beliefs? What did you learn about death? Because I know that, there will be some people who just think that's like a switching off a light and that's it, you're gone, you just does. I don't believe that, not for a second. I've talked to enough people who believe that there is an after, whatever that looks like. But what are your thoughts and beliefs on this?
Well, this is my belief, so you can take it with a grain of salt. But I have no doubt that when we die, we go on. Not one doubt. I was with thousands of people as they died, if it was at our trauma hospital or hospice. And because I can see spirits, I see angels, I see a lot. I would literally, being in the room with someone as they were dying, could see and sense like their energy coming up through them and then just like vroom, out through the top of their head. It was so incredible. And being with many people that were actively dying and would say, be able to still articulate a little bit like my grandmother is in the corner, the people who've passed on and naming it. And another piece of my experience that is honestly comforting, affirming to me is when I was with people that died, and again, so sacred, it was a calling. It felt like I was birthing people out of their body. Um, Within a day, days, week, would come back and see me. I would, in the middle of the night, open my eyes and like zoom, there would be their spirit just hovering like right around me. And it would kind of feel like they were kind of nodding, thanking me, and then zoom, within seconds be gone. And that happened so many times that I ended up having to put up an energy boundary at night saying, you cannot come within 20 feet and wake me up. It was just like too much. So I'm just sharing with you, there's many layers of reality. I think every one of us has this gift. If it's seeing, sensing, feeling, hearing, these words, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentient, but you have to be in the moment. You can't be in your thinking mind. It's in the moment. And so going back to your question, death is not an end. Our spirit, our soul goes on. We transform. I don't go any farther than that, but it's just, I have no doubt. And I've had family members, my family, I lost a brother when he was young, and he's come back and seen me. It's just like, there he is.
Wow. What an extraordinary thing to be able to witness and to really know. I
Mhm.
mean, I've talked to enough people like yourself who see spirits, feel spirits, talk to spirits, I've heard plenty of interviews with people who've had um death experiences and then come back, and so they can describe everything that they've experienced on the other side. And there's correlation between it's not like everyone's got together and gone, this is the story we're going to tell. It's like everybody who has that experience has a very similar experience. um and it is a huge sense of it gives us a huge sense of comfort, I think, to us to know that. But and here's the big but. um when our energy, our spirit goes back up to source, or to heaven, wherever you want to imagine that it goes, and it comes back again, only very, very few people can remember having been here before. Every time we have our memories wiped, and it's like, yeah, you've got some fundamentals and you've got a mission in life. Perhaps some people believe that you come down each time the soul arrives back into the earthly realm, that it has a bit of a mission, something to learn, and all the life experiences that you have, whether they be traumatic or whatever, are in place for you to grow further. Is that something that you subscribe to as an idea?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do. Absolutely.
Mm. I mean,
I've, I, I'm sorry, go on.
no, I was just going to say, I mean, that's the basic sort of, it's a very Buddhist tenet, really, that idea of,
I believe in reincarnation. I mean, it is so interesting. I mean, I've heard everything in the work I do and my private practice. And recently, a colleague and actually a friend was talking about that we come back as a dog, and I'm like, man, maybe there's some truth that I'm a huge dog lover and I have a couple of dogs, and they're just like the essence of
love.
love and presence. It's like they're such teachers. I can't imagine living on this earth without my dogs. A dog, we've had several, they're just like um I do very much actually believe in reincarnation, just intuitively the sensation, the feeling of it. Uh, and here's, it's like, be careful what you pray for. I mean, I just like, I share this story only that in my 20s, I realized this. I had a very strong sense of like, I want this to be my last lifetime. I don't want to come back. And I remember intently praying like, this is it, bring it on. And after I went through those two experiences, and I write about this in my book, a snippet of it, my husband 8 years ago, totally healthy, really athletic, collapsed after running one of our downtown lakes, was in the ICU for 10 days. He flatlined. He was just it was crazy. He was diagnosed. He survived with a very rare heart condition. I'm happy to say he's doing really well. Hopefully he can live a long life. He has to take all these high-level immune suppressant drugs. But this was happening while I was a hospice chaplain, and I took some time off. And then when I finally went back to work, and I'm driving to see someone who's actively dying. I mean, that's common. You're always with someone dying every day as a hospice chaplain, every day. And I'm driving, and all of a sudden I had the memory of in my 20s saying, bring it on. And I pulled the car over, and I'm like, I was just kidding. I mean, like, I'm really happy to come back.
Can I take that back? Can I retract it?
I was just like, I'm really happy I can come back again. Like, like we're good.
Wow. Yeah. I think it is interesting that I think it's such an undeniable truth. I was talking to a friend the other day who just recently lost their dog, their darling dog. And we were talking about how, because I've, in the last year or so been through the same experience of when you're holding your darling hound in your arms and the end is coming, how they go from feeling the weight that they are to feeling twice as heavy. And we were talking about how, you've sensed the energy going and then they become this heavy, heavy, like way heavier than they were. How is that? And we were talking about how the energy of their spirit kept them light, and we talk about light and life and, feel the light inside you. And often when we're meditating, we invite light to come in.
Mhm.
But actually, there is, when you experience that in this sort of life death situation, our life is light in,
Mhm.
not only in sort of metaphysical sense, but in actual weight
Mhm.
sense. And
Mhm.
I find that really interesting. I mean, it's clearly the energy leaving the
Mhm.
body, but yeah, I mean, what's your take on that, having witnessed death in so many ways?
Well, it's the energy. What I would go towards, it's that your spirit, your soul, yes, but we're energy. We're energy. We're energy. Our body's energy. We have an energy field around us, and that our soul is that vibrant energy. Is like vroom, that I can feel. I can literally. I felt it with so many people. I could just see and sense it going up. Many people like up, 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 and there's just like popped out through the top of their head, and then many times I could feel their spirit hovering above their body.
Mm,
Fascinating. So I think, for example, with your dog, and I've had the same experience with a couple dogs, holding them and then they died in my arms. And it's just it's sacred and it's so hard, with
mm,
your dog and with obviously loved one as well. But the energy shifts in the room. I mean, I've experienced this with so many people. Like when their spirit finally leaves their body, or even a dog, it's just like there's a notable energetic shift that happens in the room where the energy animating their being, their essence, their soul, it's no longer there. It's over here.
mm,
So I've
mm.
had that. I could share other experiences, notable experiences around that. And that goes back to just, I would say, bringing it back to just our conversation of how you're living. We are vibrational energy. Are we living when we can embody thankfulness, love, joy, some of the highest vibrational energy we can hold in our body? And so when you feel that, or when you think about, even thinking about, what am I thankful for? And I go to my dog Bella and I feel Bella and I'm just like, I can feel that vibration. The opposite is, and this happens for all of us, all of a sudden, if you're feeling fear or guilt, shame, all those feelings, those are the lowest vibrational energies. So
Heavy.
just
It
noticing,
stinks.
very heavy.
Which
Yeah.
is why you have phrases like that sinking feeling.
Mhm.
It's that sinking into a low vibrational feeling that you have when remember that you haven't paid your credit card bill this month or whatever it is. You have that sinking feeling of dread and regret and shame and guilt, exactly all of those horrible energetic things. And I'm wondering, I'm sort of going to bring it back, like this idea of the energy that we hold within us, um, in terms of quantum physics, in terms of like every cell within us has this space, has this energy, which has a kind of what's the opposite of gravity? A sort of a lift, a
Yeah.
lightness, if you like. And
Mhm.
so when we are down, when we're in our low vibrational state, we
Mhm.
slump, we physically go down, we physically become, we may even like ground ourselves by becoming bigger physically. We sort of like, oof, that depression feeling of heaviness. We talk
Mhm.
about that feeling of heaviness. And when
Mhm.
we're joyful, that is a light sensation, and I feel like this is the vibration within each atom, within each cell of our
Yep.
bodies that is feeling that energy, which is why it's just so goddamn important that we do this work, that we embody this, that we consciously raise our vibrations of
Yep, yep,
authenticity and love. And
for sure. In fact, research wise, they know that 80% of all illness, disease, unease is related to stress and related. I mean, that's stress, that unrest, that unease. There's a direct correlation there.
yeah, yeah, there is. No, it's a fascinating thing to become aware of. And I think that in order to live, and I'm going to check, can't get my words out. I'm going to steal one of your phrases. In order to live a multi-dimensional life,
Mhm, mhm.
that sense of being alive. Like there's a great song, I think it's a Celine Dion song it's just called I'm Alive. And it's a really uplifting song, you know, and just singing I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive. Like, oh my God, the excitement, even just saying that 3 times sends shivers up my spine
Yeah.
because it's an exciting thing to be alive. I mean, this is an
Yep.
adventure that we need to cherish, even if we know that we might come back. But who knows, we might come back as a fly or
Mhm,
or a
mhm,
wasp or something that people don't like. But talk to me a little bit about your interpretation of a multidimensional life.
mhm. Just what you were saying, feeling that preciousness of being alive. And that's what I felt when I was 12, 11, 12, 13. It was just like, I'm here. It's like, in the sense, and I realize I look back now, I didn't even realize it at the time. I was so little, but just the preciousness of like being alive, seeing the different hues of the sun falling on the grass and the trees and the wind. And it was just magical. And I experienced that then. It's like, wow.
And
So,
when you
mhm,
came out of that episode of being poorly as a child, very poorly, and then you went back to school and you were, you know, with all your other mates in school,
mhm.
aged presumably 11, 12, whatever, when you got back to school, and they're all just living their kid lives, just like taking life for granted. Did you feel slightly separate and differentiated from them because they hadn't clocked the fact that they were alive? Because most kids don't.
Right. Well, absolutely. In fact, when I was going through treatment, I lost all my hair. I wore a wig with a bandana, and I have a vivid memory of playing outside in the playground and this one kid teasing me, like saying I was bald, and the whole class of kids ganged up to take like to help support me. And one guy started, hitting this kid. It was just like, whoa. I mean, just fascinating. So there's little snippets of stories like that in my life, but absolutely as a teenager, well, that's why instead of going to parties, I was home on Friday and Saturday night. I had one girlfriend and we would sit and read these books and like, what do you think it means about, you know, how we have free will and how do we decide? And
I love that. A life
yeah,
of exploring, a life of
yes.
really seeking for the answers of what it is to be a human being. What a
Hmm.
fascinating. And I'm presuming that all of this wisdom, all of this experience that you have is in your book, Everyday Awakening.
Snippets of it. Yes, I weave in some of my stories, some client stories, what I think it means to just embody love and how do you find flow in your life and that oneness with the universe. That amidst exercises and just asking everyone in the reader, how are you choosing to live?
Mm. Yeah, I know. I think whenever we can get the opportunity to examine those questions from a slightly different perspective, and everybody has a different perspective, of course, it's always fascinating. So presumably people can get hold of Everyday Awakening by Catherine Duncan in all the normal places that one can find books.
Yep, yep. Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I'm all over my website, everydayawakening.com, and I'm all over social media. That's been the most challenging thing. It's one thing to like write the book, which was poured through me. But then it's like, okay, social media and interviews, it's like, woof. But it's been great growing, learning, and keep opening.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there's the I feel you. The social media thing is a challenge, but I love the sound of your book. It does sound amazing, and I'm regret I should have ordered it before I talked to you, but now I've just had all your wisdom for so what else is there anything else that you want to as your sort of message to my listeners, but to the world? What is your do you have anything that you want to just kind of finish off with saying today?
I just invite everyone listening, how are you choosing to live? And it's so easy to live where your mind runs you, where you're living on autopilot, where you're not even conscious of like the preciousness of life happening in the moment through each day. And you can truly open into and cultivate and this peace, the joy, the love, the ease. And I know it's easy to say that when life can be really hard and really messy. And I get that. And I've lived through a lot of that too. Um, but it's a choice that we can really learn how to open into the preciousness of life and that eternal presence that's here now in our being, and feel that and open into that and live from there. And it's a choice and it's a practice, a mindful practice of how you're living every day.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you, Catherine.
Mhm.
And thank you so much for spending your time with me today. It's been an absolute delight. Thank you.
It's a light to meet you.